Welcome to the Pathways to Sustainability Conference 2023. Thank you for joining us on that time machine and ride and journey. And it's my pleasure to introduce the curator of this morning's plenary sessions, Professor Dr. Maarten Heyer, who is also the scientific director of the Pathways to Sustainability theme, a distinguished professor in urban futures and the head of the Urban Future Studio. I'd like to welcome you up here, Maarten, and I'll also bring up Nienke Laverman and Sietse. Rijksma, if you could come forward. Maarten, we just spent some time seeing the future. That was the theme, starting from 2060. Could you talk to us a little bit about the intention of this 2060 experiment?
It's pretty obvious that if we keep continuing doing the things the way we did, we get what we got. So we need to transform and not only call for others to transform, but start with our own very practices. And the one practice that we have most control over is our conference. That's the unit of academic thinking. That is what we do. That's our privilege, our PAG. We travel intercontinental under the pretense that it is essential for what we do. And I think we need to start with changing our own practices if we really are serious about the challenges that we keep pointing out.
And kind of embodying that future in these spaces, yeah. Now, Maarten, I know you wanted to ask Nienke and Sietse something, so if you can come up here, I'll just move out of your way. Just thank you so much from me as well, and over to you, Maarten.
Yeah. No, so one of the things that I was really insistent on is also to break away with our habit of constantly talking. And when I met you two, I was really overwhelmed, I must say, but what you bring to the fore. And I want to ask you, Nienke, you've sort of evolved and came up with the album Plant, and you find yourself often in very different situations than just in a theater with people expecting music. Can you tell me something, and the audience, about what you think is happening, why people respond so directly to, for instance, your ancestor?
Ooh, what we try to do with the album Plant is to offer different perspectives on the situation where we're in now. And I think music is always a great means to help, because it opens another part of the brain, you know, it gets immediately to the emotional level, so that helps a lot. And we tried, with, if you want to change yourself or your worldview, or that's something quite big, but then it can help, we thought, to offer different perspectives. So, for instance, to take the perspective of a tree, where we started with how would a tree look upon us, and if you look through their eyes, you look differently to yourself. For instance, to look back from the future to ourselves with your ancestor. How would our great-grandchildren look upon us? And that's what we tried with this album. So we also went ourselves from all those emotions, from despair to hope to, frustration, and ultimately to love in the last song. That is the thing, I think, that binds us. And so that's the journey we went through in theaters, but also in conferences like this. And,
I'm deeply appreciative, and I'm sure the audience was too. Sietse, you've been also on a journey with Teune Spiersma, who's one of our, Spinoza-winning academics. Mm-hmm. Can you tell a bit about how you experienced that collaboration between art and science?
The nice thing with Teune is he's a biologist, and when he was a kid, he wanted to be a musician. And when I was a kid, I want to be a biologist. So we turned it around. We find each other. I went all over the world with him to find birds while migrating, for example, the Greenland, Mauritania, China. And when we were in Mauritania in 2007, that was my first expedition. And I was playing with orchestras, and I was in the Sahara. And at that moment, I thought, okay, this is what I want. I want my love for birds and landscape. I want that combined with film and music. So Teune in that expedition changed my life. So I quit all the orchestras, and at that moment, we joining the stage with him. And he's doing a lot of research to migrating birds all over the world for 40 years. So there's a lot of data. And I'm playing the music in this kind of performance together. So I start with music, he do the lecture, music, lecture, music. And in the end, we're playing together. And it's really, people are really crying when we tell the story about the godwit, the grutto, our national bird. It's really a declining story in this last 30 years. And people really crying in the audience because the music is getting into your heart and the data is getting into your brain. So this combination was, I think we played now for 15 years together, from 2007 till now. So it was really a dream for me to get the biologist, and for him the same. So he's get a musician.
So the top biologist combined with the top musicians, that is what we're after if we want to really transform. Thank you very much for being a keynote performer, and I hope that idea of not only having keynote speakers also sticks in the 37 years that we have left until 2060.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Just, if you can stay, just head on this way, move a little bit this way, yeah. And now I'll invite Dr. Lewis Akanji, Dr. Fatima Denton, if you just come around this way, we're going to come bring you right here. And I'm going to ask all of you, what was Beatrice, Elena, and Harriet, what was your experience of putting together your thoughts and reflections from the perspective of 2060? What do you think we should learn from an approach like this? Beatrice?
Yeah, for me, this doesn't fit any historical method that I normally work with. So I felt that Maarten Hager had done me a really nasty job. And so then I just let my imagination run loose. And that was great to test on this audience.
Great, thanks, Elena.
Yeah, so for me, I think it fits my job a bit better to look more into the future, but I do think that, I mean, we are all in my field working on developing renewable technologies, and maybe in the back of our minds we know that we are maybe entering a next crisis, which is the materials crisis. So when I was thinking about looking back in 2060, I felt that the me in 2023 should think about this really more also in my research, right? So that like I can find something really nice on a small scale, but if we want to implement it on a worldwide scale, we have to think about where do our materials come from. And it may work very nice in the lab, but if we are going to depend fully on China to make it, we may enter into new problems. So this is something I know in the back of my mind, but if I really have to think about 2060 and how it all changed, then it increases importance to also think about this, yes.
Thank you. We'll go to Harriet, Fatima, then Lewis. Harriet.
Yeah, thank you. So I stepped in for Nikki Franceschi, who sadly couldn't be with us at the last minute. So I haven't had very much time to think about the future, but I did enjoy doing it, as you saw. Yeah, I feel like as I'm a social scientist, I work on political science, geography background, and I think that we're very used to criticizing stories of technology that are too simple, but I think predominantly we work with stories of society that are too simple. We transfer all the things that we miss or we love about society now into the future and think that the future will be better if they are there, and I'm afraid that I don't agree, and I think that's why I kept mentioning Shell and wolves and other things, because I think we need to make our stories of future societies much more complicated and learn to get used to the idea that our futures will be as uncomfortable as our presents.
Dr. Denton, what was your experience from coming from a 2060 perspective? What do you think we can learn from that?
Yes, it took me a while to kind of get myself into that space. I think it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it was very humbling, actually, because we always using words like leapfrogging. You know, we talk about leapfrogging technologies, and I'm sort of thinking to myself, we need to leapfrog massively ourselves, our value systems. It seems like a lot of things that were said by yourselves, by Lewis, meant that there are so many things we need to get right. You know, so getting those things right and in what order, I think to me was like a lot of things to contain. Yeah, so I found this very, very humbling. I think it forces you to sort of say, what must we get right now? You know, and how do we pace ourselves in the process? Yeah.
Great. Dr. Lewis Akenjidi, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was thinking about is that the first thing I was thinking was that I'm a grandpa, and I wonder how my grandkids and my great-grandkids are doing, and what kind of world did I contribute to or not contribute to. And then, but it became this really relieving space in which to play, but not to get unhinged from the science or unhinged from reality, but to imagine what would happen if all these ideas we're working on actually came true. Because there's a lot of fragments of possible futures that are floating around scientific bodies, traditional communities, in different spaces, but they're hardly ever really brought together in a constructive way that paints a picture of possibly what landscape we would be in. And what this allowed was to play with that a little bit, but also to also start seeing that although it's 40 years from now, there's an unease. We've managed to tame and stay around 1.5, but we still run the risk of going above or even below. It's not that it's a utopia. It's just lots of elements are learning to coexist. It's still a journey, and that is the fragility. It also shows that the huge challenge we have to get out of the mess that we've made. It's incredible.
Great. Well, please join me in thanking again our speakers and our performers from this morning.